Hi, welcome to the first edition of Conscious Creator. I am your host, Kathleen Schassler, and tonight we are joined by Evan Pritchard from the Center for Algonquin Culture. That's located in New York State, correct? And Evan was
Yes.
gracious to join me on short notice, and he really has moved heaven and earth to be here today, and I really appreciate that. It's fantastic.
Well, thank you.
Evan Pritchard is a descendant of the Mi'kmaq people, part of the Algonquin Nations, and is the founder of the Center for the Algonquin Culture. He's the author of many titles, but one of the books that caught my eye was The Native New Yorkers, The Legacy of the Algonquin People of New York. And another book that looked so fascinating was No Word for Time, The Way of the Algonquin People. So I'm so fascinated to hear about your work. I don't know if you could just...
Thank you.
You can probably maybe give a small synopsis of your work. You do so much, and I can't even believe all the events that are on your calendar for this culture center. But I'm going to leave it to you to do a small synopsis, but then tell me, we can dive deeper into some of the topics that you report on.
Okay, well, I have quite a lot of books, and I want to say that one thing I like about, our show today is the idea of conscious co-creators.
Yes.
Is a really fundamental concept in the spiritual teachings of the Algonquins. So each of my books in some way references that, and some would be very subtle, like in a history book or something. But the whole idea of, conscious co-creating has always been a part of my life. And we use a phrase, becoming the tool of the creator and to help creation continue. And so it really boils down to that. So there you go. There's the whole show. We can shut up now. And
I think
that really we're on the same page.
Yes. And it was co-creator in my mind. It was co-creator, but it flowed better as conscious creator for this title, I thought. But it does reflect that concept of co-creators because we're all co-creators. So maybe it makes it into a singular co-creator.
Right.
I love that concept. Yes.
Oh, yeah. And I kind of figured that. I kind of figured that's what happened, making it nice and streamlined. And to go into more detail, we have a lot of, I do about 3 events a week, sometimes more. I was just actually near Central Connecticut with Nira talking about time calendars, which ties in with what the other, Raymond's been talking about.
Right. Oh,
but I like this, very coincidental. So that went really well. Talked about moon turtle calendars, and I talked about that in a book, Henry Hudson and the Algonquins. Right. And I have a copy. I met someone else's house, by the way, but they have a copy of Henry Hudson and the Algonquins.
Right.
A whole section. Throughout the book, it talks about the calendars as used to clarify prophecies about the future. But also there is like a chart, about the moon turtle and how it was used as a calendar. And actually, it's similar, but not the same as the Mayan calendars. And it's based on the box turtle, by the way. Maybe even you could say a Mexican box turtle, but it's not Mayan. It's similar. So that's an Algonquin thing as brought down through the Midewiwin, which is the kind of the secret societies, which still exist, by the way.
Wow.
So, but in terms of conscious creating and co-creating, because I did figure that that's what you were also talking about. We talk about helping creation continue, which is something that's embedded in the oral tradition, but which I stress with people because I think that they realize the timeliness and importance of helping creation to continue. That we are an essential part of that process. We help make creation continue. And this morning we did it's May 1st, by the way, if people are looking at this show on, some kind of archive. Today is May 1st or May Day, which is right in between the spring equinox and the summer solstice. And it is the day that was recognized by many natives here and you can mark it with a stone circle. You can just put an extra stone in between your stone for spring equinox and summer solstice, and there you have it. And here we've made this morning, a bunch of us went out to a lake that was known to be the home of a Native American named Tunis. It's called Tunis Lake. And we did a sunrise ceremony where actually we're out there. You know, we were in deep snow this morning, believe it or not, in New York.
Wow.
It was an amazing thing to have snow there and to do an outdoor ceremony on May Day with the snow.
Incredible.
And there was lots of steam and fog coming up on the lake. And so we did a whole sunrise ceremony today. And we did a song to help the sun come up. And of course, where we were, it turns out there was a hill, kind of a mountain there right in the east. So, you know, it was more of a struggle for the sun to come up. But that's kind of the belief is, you know, we sing songs and we sing to the sun and we help the sun come up. And you can take it metaphorically or what. But the idea is that somebody always does a song to help the sun come up. And so we wouldn't know, you know, and there's the old story about all the anthropologists would come up to our people in the bush and they'd see this and they said, well, have you ever tried it without singing the sun up to see if it would come up anyway? And of course, the proper answer is no. Are you crazy? That would be such a risk for what? You know, who cares? You know, why would we ever do that? So of course, we always want to sing the sun up just in case, you know. So that's, you know, it's a teaching tale. But we did it this morning with a bunch of us. We sang the sun up. And it took a while for it to come over the mountain, but we felt a really good feeling when the sun was fully visible. And whenever you're watching sunrise, whenever you watch sunrise, you know, there's that moment when it just suddenly bursts there, and it's very exciting.
Do you have, when you do these type of ceremonies, is it typically the same type of ceremony that you would do or different songs that you will sing? When you did this sunrise ceremony this morning, is it the same ceremony that you would do each time, or is it vary?
Well, no, I mean, what I'm doing is, you know, not to try to make it just exactly like, you know, traditional elders would do, but to use the, you know, the philosophy and concepts to do a ceremony that it was, you know, authentic in terms of its content. So, like, there's a song that came to me that I would sing for the sun, and you know, there's certain things that, like, later we did a ribbon ceremony, and we did a drumming song. We welcomed in the four directions through song. So all that is, you know, done in a traditional manner, but not using like a same exact ceremony each time, not at all. So it's similar. You follow me?
No, I am. Yeah? I am. We just were having a little technical issue there, but
Right.
I'm really fascinated with, you know, I'm very new to all of this information. And even as I've been recovering over the past year, I've spent so much time in nature. And so I think that was part of my journey here. And then I started to do, after I had a calendar reading with Raymond Tarpey, the Mayan calendar reading, he was encouraging me to research the indigenous tribes that live below me here in Connecticut. And so I started to look into some of that and researching that information. And I spend a lot of time on Tungus Mountain, and I work with some shaman here in Connecticut too. And so I just see the interconnectedness of all things. You know, I'm seeing it more and more, and I appreciate so much the healing value of nature, you know, and do think that I agree with that being a medicine space. You know, for me, I don't know how we could live without that, you know. And
you know, Tungus is an Algonquin word, and it means where the floodwaters flow over the bend in the river. And Tungus, you know, that has some symbolic meaning, but there's a bend in the river and the water flows over that at times. And that was also a place where many nations gathered. I don't know if you knew that. The native people called Tungus like a kind of a UN for various people. This is in the 1600s.
Yes.
So it's like a healing space, a very large one, of course. A large area of Connecticut was where people of different nations who were maybe refugees from wars or whatever would Tunxus. And in fact, in my new book, which I will take the pleasure of showing you, this is the Tappan book.
Yes, that's exciting. That's really exciting.
Has a part in about the Tunxus area in that I'm trying to make people more aware of some of the massacres that have happened that history has not really fully reported. There was one on February 25th, 1643, where the Tappan were massacred at Pavonia, and many of them went to Tunxus. And then, maybe 100 years later, came back to Pavonia to view the, scene, where their ancestors had lived. And so Tunxus, that's just one example, but there are many, many examples where people who have felt like they couldn't deal with the situation, couldn't cope with it through warfare or starvation or conflict, went to Tunxus to heal and to regenerate their people. And so Tunxus had many languages spoken there, and everybody got along in a kind of a tribal harmony, if you will.
Right.
And so that's mentioned in the book, the Tappan of the River Crossings, which is currently self-published.
Right.
But will come out, I hope, in the next year in the stores and stuff. But it's the Tappan is an incredible story where, especially if you have any links to northern New Jersey, that's like a major Lenape tribe that were very powerful and politically very enlightened. And Governor Kieft, who was a madman living in Manhattan, by the way, which of course that could never happen again. But he was, he basically attacked them and because they were standing in the way of his little empire, but they were very diplomatic and just people with a kind of a commonwealth. And so you don't hear about them anymore for that, reason. They were massacred and also, kind of pushed away.
Right.
So I just want to mention that that's a big project I'm working on. And of course, the Tappan Z Bridge has been technically renamed, and a lot of people are very upset by that, and rightly so, because Tappan Z, yes, it was renamed in the middle of the night on, was it July, I forgot the date, July 17th? I can't remember. But it was renamed in the middle of the night in some kind of late session. This past year, and nobody was consulted about it. And so they have a new bridge, right? So they named the new bridge. They didn't name it Tappan Zee. But in one stroke of the pen, wiping out several hundred years of Native American history and Dutch history, of which we're all really proud of. I mean, almost most New Yorkers are proud to know that we're a Dutch colony, that they got along somewhat with Native Americans, and the Tappan were very powerful and important people, and all that's preserved in the name of the bridge. And then now, technically, that's been done away with. And so now there are people protesting this and trying to get the name back for this new bridge. And the mayor of Nyack, which is where the bridge is footed, I was told, it's been said that, he has like a permanent permit for people who want to protest that. That's how far it's gotten.
It's interesting.
You follow that? That's like the mayor of Nyack is on the side of the people wanting to preserve and restore the name of the Tappan Zee Bridge.
Right.
It's
I would
very
think
strange.
if more people learn
part of why I wrote the book, because
I would think the more people that would hear about that, because
through this,
it's all of our culture. I grew up in Haverstraw, and that's also founded by the Dutch.
Yep.
Now it's right up the river from Nyack, and
it's
so your culture is also my culture.
That's right. Then that was also Tappan land, the Haverstraw land, and there's an interesting story about how it went through several stages to become what it is today. And it's all very interesting and in the book. But that was Tappan land, and then there was this group from the east that were like refugees, and the Tappan said, "We can come and you can be safe with us, but please note that the land isn't very good to grow anything, And so they called it Ruomanchenak, which means a really bad place to grow corn. And the people took that name on and became the Ruomanchenak people. And then the Dutch came rather early on, as you know, to buy that land. They offered trinkets for it. And they said, do you want to know what it's called? And they said, well, we don't know what it's called. Just want the land. So, you know, they bought it. And they couldn't grow anything. And the ground was like hard as a brick. So in frustration, you know, they ultimately cut it up into bricks, but even the garden soil into bricks. And then it turns out that even the bricks weren't that good. So they basically turned to their Bibles and they looked at Exodus and they saw about the Jews adding oat straw to the bricks to make them stronger. So they said, oh, let's try it. So they grew oat straw somehow, added to the bricks. And the word for oat straw is haverstraw, by the way. And that's where the word for the town comes from. Because those were great bricks. And of course, you know, Haverstraw is now the home of the National Brick Museum, that it all goes back to the Ruomanchenak people and before them, the Tapan. And so when the Ruomanchenaks got tired of living with these Dutch people and their bricks, they moved on and they gave the land back to the Tapan. They didn't give the land back to the Dutch. It's so complicated, but they gave it back to the Tapan saying, thank you for the timeshare here. And they moved on. So that's a deep history of Haverstraw. And that's in the book, The Tapan, the Keepers of the River Crossings. Because, you know, there are several places to cross the river going over to Croton Point. And there were ferries. This is a very important part of the book. One of the key focuses is that the Tapan maintained muhul, or dugout canoes that were used as ferries, both sides, going across the river all the time between Croton Point or Squaw Cove, it's actually, some people call it, and Haverstraw on the other side.
And that's
so that was a regular thing controlled by the Tapan.
The bay is huge in Haverstraw too.
There's a lot of it.
It's wide. The river's so wide there.
Yeah, really important.
It's a beautiful spot.
Right.
I would love that the next time, if we're able to do this again, I would love to be able to read your work next time, so that I'll be able to talk to you and ask you more questions. But because it's all so fascinating.
Good.
I know that Raymond Tarpey is available and online. I don't know if you're interested. If you're interested, we could pull him into this conversation and kind of see where that goes. Because he's going to bring in some interesting, angles regarding the Mayan calendar. And if you also have some input on that, I think that would be fascinating. I would love to learn more about your connection to this. Or as you were talking about the other calendar, it was the Turtle Moon calendar? Is that
Moon Turtle calendar? Yeah. We call it Moon Turtle calendar. It's not exactly like the Mayans, but we could, compare notes. But I don't, go around, speaking about the Mayans in particular.
Right.
But there are connections. There are obvious similarities, a parallel.
Correct.
So that's up to you. So if you want to try that.
I can't really, I don't really, I can't communicate with the Biggie. I can't really get you here. So they would have to let me know. Here we go. He's sending him a message. I'm just unsure if what his time is as well. And I appreciate your time so much. But I think I see Raymond.
Well, I see his face.
Here he is. He's coming.
I'm seeing Raymond.
Raymond Tarpey.
He's here. Hello, Raymond.
Let me introduce Raymond Tarpey. Is a teacher, a linguist, a historian, and an Edgar Cayce scholar. And he also is the caretaker of Earthkeeper, an agate crystal skull that came to him in a very remarkable way. And maybe Raymond can share that story a little bit. And he also offers these Mayan calendar readings with Earthkeeper. And he has said that there are 276 entities that offer testimony from within the skull. So I'm curious to hear too about the Edgar Cayce material and how you use that to reinterpret history or interpret history. Can you hear me, Raymond?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can. Just push your video camera down a little bit further, your screen, so I can see your whole face. And I'd like to introduce you to Evan Pritchard is here with me.
Okay. I've been listening to you both.
Yes, so it's been interesting. And Raymond knows that technology can sometimes be very tricky.
Yes.
So, and I'm so grateful for both of you coming together here tonight. So if you would like to, Raymond, briefly just talk about your work, a small synopsis, specifically regarding, you know, the Mayan calendar readings and your work with and Edgar Casey as well.
Yes. My research begins with other cultures because I was in the Army and studied Vietnamese, and that brought me to Chinese, and I spent several years in China studying China. And then when I began to read, because I was teaching some children from Mexico who were never taught their own Indian heritage. It wasn't in the schools. So I took it upon myself to teach them that because it's in their blood. And so I started to look at the Maya. And when I looked at the Maya, I saw China. I'm not still yet sure of the connection, but I think there have been things going across the ocean that we have no track of. And there are ancient continents that we have no track of. And so our history is sort of up in the air and is subject to change at any point with the development of technology. Anyway, for the Maya, I saw that they had a glyph for the rabbit in the moon. And I saw also the goddess and the rabbit. And so it's so similar to China. They have a number system that's based on 1, 5, and 0, which is the principle of the abacus. So my curiosity was sparked. And I began to study the Maya. And within that culture, in all of American Indian cultures that I have studied thus far, I found an intelligence and a connection with the earth that I have never seen in other cultures that I have studied.
That's fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And it brought me my wife, Nobi, brought me into the women bring us into things, I think. Men are more staid, more flexible. I go to many spiritual meetings and it's mostly women. And I really respect women because they're more sensitive. And so I got dragged into Edgar Casey's ARE. And I began to read the readings of Edgar Casey. And it knocked my socks off. I read material that it was so astounding, so weird. He talked about an individual in Atlantis over 200,000 years ago, as I surmise from the datum. I think it was 98,000 years before the arrival of Ram in India. Good luck with that. This is straight from the Akashic. And, I just saw a connection because he said there was this being which is related to the Creator in a special way, who separated himself into 5 different Adam and Eves. So there's not one Adam and Eve story. There are 5. And he said there's one for the red Americas. He called them this guy was hypnotized. He was wrapped up in the early 1900s with the hypnotic circus that followed the Barnum and Bailey circus.
Interesting.
They hypnotized friends and neighbors and got a lot of laughs. But when they hypnotized Edgar Casey, strange things started to come out. So they decided to work on him and ask him questions. And eventually what came out was Akashic record information about Atlantis, Lemuria, and as I was saying, the different 5 Adams and Eves around the world. And he described the red people as Atlanteans and Americans. That means the ancient inhabitants of America and Atlantis are of the red dimension. And the red dimension, he said, has a power and a mission with feeling. And he spoke also about the European. And he said that the European is, the color is white, but it's not so important what the color is. It's the spiritual vibration. And he said that that spiritual vibration has to do with the eye. The Europeans are great at having visions for themselves and everyone else. That is their power. It is a great power, and we now live under the regime of that vision. The problem with the European, not the problem, the destiny of the European is to eventually learn how to feel, because they have visions, but they cannot feel the suffering that their visions cause. It's not in them. It's in the design, the basic design of the earth itself. And so they were invited to America to learn how to feel as the American Indian can in the red dimension. I said that to an American Indian. He said, "We invited them?" And then he thought a minute and he said, "Maybe we did." Because one thing sacrifices to the other here. That's the nature of the food chain and people to people. And the way of enlightenment is through the sacrifice of our own agendas to the understanding and needs of the other. So I'll end that there.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
I'm interested what Evan would have to say about that.
I would love to hear your response, Evan.
It's overwhelming.
Well, let me begin. I was just reading a book. I hadn't seen before, Prophecy of the Rainbow Warriors, and there's a Alaskan gentleman interviewed. This is from the 30s, saying a story about a young man who was asking, why did the Creator allow the land, the natives, to lose all their land in North America, or most of it? And was basically mentioning a prophecy that, that they would be humbled by this experience, but then when the people of the world were here, from all over, that the natives would teach them, to live in harmony like the rainbow. And that's kind of why, in a sense, all this has happened. And, that the teaching that the prophecy says they would teach is exactly that, for love of all life and seeing all, animals and plants equal to us, and all the people and all the races as equal and brothers. And that is true. That is a philosophy that a lot of Native Americans have grown up with. And so I just read that book for the first time, thanks to, I'm not at home now, but I picked up this book, and, it's inspiring and makes a lot of sense. I worked with William Commanda, who is now passed on, but he taught the rainbow prophecies of the Algonquins, which is part of the Seven Fires prophecies, and it does tie in together. When I think of, in terms of Edgar Casey, I've lived in and around Poughkeepsie much of my life, and we have the Poughkeepsie seer, which is Andrew Jackson Davis. I'm sure you've heard of him. He was acknowledged by Casey as being his predecessor, because when hypnosis was really, really, really new, he was a young, uneducated, and I believe Native American man living in Poughkeepsie, and I think he was a cobbler. And so here comes this, like you say, kind of a circus atmosphere, and the same thing happened. He was hypnotized, And this is in, 1840, I think, 1841. And so he's hypnotized. All of a sudden, all this comes out, and he seems to know everything, and then begins his whole career as a spiritual teacher. And he founded spiritualism as we think of it today in America, and wrote 35 books. Well, were very popular in the day. So Andrew Jackson Davis is now enshrined at ARE and whatever,
And he was
Virginia Beach.
Oh.
So you've heard of it?
Yes, I heard of him.
So I believe he was,
His record.
okay, I believe I researched his, life. I mean, there's several good books, but yeah, it seems the circumstances are, make it extremely likely he was what we call Lenape. And I even kind of tracked down probably where he was born. But he's a fascinating person, Andrew Jackson Davis. And there's several authors who have written about him, but he's really just, really fills in the gap in a sense, talking about his understanding of Native culture, and it's coming out through this hypnosis, which inspired Casey. And as far as Lemuria, I'm very interested in factual scientific evidence that shows there was such a place. And I find that data in, I guess it's Oppenheimer's studies about the land below India, south of India in the Indian Ocean. Apparently it's very shallow there. And you have Dwarpa, and you have, different islands that apparently were mountains for this whole civilization that was there. And if you read the Rig Vedas, especially the first books of the Rig Veda, they talk about these stories of this gigantic land, where all these people lived, and the lemurs lived there. Lemurs, it's hence, I think, where Lemuria came from. So as to the age of it, that's where it gets very, that old, okay. But that was inundated about 9,000 BC, which isn't very long ago, as you know, from our perspective. So that Dwarpa, south of, the Indus Valley. I don't know if you've ever looked into that, but it's something that interests me.
Well, I look into everything I possibly can. There is so much to look into. We're only talking.
It's an overwhelming sometimes.
Can I ask you, Raymond, when looking at your website, so it talks about the ancient Mayan calendar as one of the red shamanic awakening instruments, it says.
Yeah, it's only one of the instruments.
So the red shamanic awakening, can you tell me a little bit more about that? And
well, awakening is the destiny of all souls, it seems. That we have within us each a shaman. And the shaman is one who breaks through all the bubbles of culture, of education, of groups of any kind, and becomes alone and observes without prejudice the history and the things happening around them. And they realize that we are all equal. Not only are humans equal, but humans and plants and animals and stones are equal to us. The testimony coming from Europe tells us that only human beings have souls, and only human beings are made in the image and likeness of the Creator. And for the Maya, that was sort of stealing a base. We are younger than they are. And when I was at Indian people in Oregon, they pray. They pray to the Great Spirit, and they pray to the animals and plants for patience with us, because we are new. And they are older, and they know how to sacrifice, to give themselves up. But humans are new and learning.
Very young, right? We're very young here. As old as we feel, we're so young and we know so little. Is that I know less and less the older I get.
You need to study.
If I can interject.
Sure.
yeah, research and study really sometimes gives us great insight. Like, I know that the bodhisattvas in Tibet have, the bodhisattva vows about, sacrificing themselves for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Yes.
And so a lot of the Tibetan teachers who are in America, they streamline things a little bit and they're translated into a language they sometimes have trouble with. And they never really say what a sentient being is. They figure, well, you'll know. And so I thought, and I did, go to a lot of Tibetan Rinpoches when I was younger saying, help me figure me out, like a lot of people have. And I never asked this question, what is a sentient being? Well, I did some research on it and found that the sentient being in the original Tibetan means people, animals, whatever, it's animals absolutely included. And so when the Bodhisattva vow is like, I want to be a bridge in a boat for the benefit of all sentient beings, they're talking about people and animals, but you never hear that. But that's the original interpretation, apparently. And, Bob Thurman would agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, again, the Tibetans are, of course, this kind of hub that links all of us together with the European and the Native American in some ways. And so, it is significant. And yeah, for Native people, probably one of the most significant teachings from the Native spiritual world is that animals are equal. And a lot of people can say that, but most people don't really live that.
Yeah, they say
to really communicate as equal with the animal.
Yeah, in their education, they don't receive that kind of education. It was in their testimonies, in their written testimonies especially, which are really just graven images, and therefore not really cannot lay claim to the entire Word of God. The Word of God is in every creation. It's not centered in any one thing. The Creator loves. My research leads me to the conclusion that the Creator has no partiality to any part of the creation. All of it is secret in every one of its small parts. And that is the learning that we have to accomplish. We have to learn the respect. And respect in Latin is R-E again and S-P-E-C-T, to look again, because we're taught to see even by our education systems, which globally have become European. And the European looks at the sky, but does not look at the earth. That's why in their prayer, they say, our Father who art in heaven. They don't mention earth. Our Father who art in heaven and earth, and our Father, Mother. We need to always check on what we're educated with. And the word education is also Latin. E means to go out. D-U-C means lead, like a duke or that leads heat around the house. To lead out, not stuff in. Human beings have been stuffed by a variety of conquering civilizations, and they have received an education that separates them from the world in the European model, from the earth.
Right.
I'll stop there.
It's true. I could see
well,
that.
Yes, and
today, especially.
I'm just saying, well, I was going to brought up. Oh,
go ahead.
I just want to say that I was,
Uh-oh.
Little frozen there.
When we're in sacred space, that we are the child of Mother Earth and Father Sky, and that's a kind of a trinity. And when you're in sacred space, such as in a sweat lodge or the circle, that you are the child. You're the that trinity. It's not that you're an avatar like Jesus necessarily, but that's a sacred position to have. Is that childlike position? I don't know if you've ever come across that, but that's what we have always said. I guess I'm a Micmac
everything.
descendant. That's what I study.
Yeah. We are, because in the Mayan creation story, it was the gods of earth who met the god of sky, and together they created the cosmos. It is, the earth is also involved. It's not that, and for the Maya, when they look at animals or they look at plants, they look at them as seriously as Westerners look at, or Europeans look at astrology. They look at the stars for astrology, but for the American Indian, the animals are telling us equally things of wisdom and prophecy.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah, I think we
So
have.
you mentioned earlier about the shed and I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Are you on?
I'm on.
Yes.
I'm doing my best to stay here.
Can you push your video camera so we can see your whole face? Push it down. There you go.
Okay, here I am.
Then I can hear you better. Perfect. So,
we're challenged by the new technology. We're,
I'm curious, Raymond, when you do these calendar readings, so I had a calendar reading at the end of January, I think, and that got me to do some of the studies that you had suggested to learn about the tribes that live beneath me here in Connecticut. And how many of these readings have you done? And so I'm just so curious to know if these people that get the readings also pick up the study like I have, and what areas they would be in, and what type of studies, or if you ever follow up on any of these folks.
Oh, I do. I've done hundreds of readings, and it was very esoteric at the beginning until I met with, till Regina Meredith found me in 2011 in Los Angeles at the Crystal Skulls Conference. And she said to me, Raymond, I just came here to see you. And I said, why is that? And she said, you're not, nobody else is saying what you're saying. And a relationship between Regina and I grew there. And so I come in every once in a while and do an interview with Regina, who is a shaman. She is an interview shaman. And when she starts interviewing me, I don't even know where I am anymore. It is another dimension.
She's really smart, yeah.
And what we achieve through our study, but the study is not the same as we were taught in schools. The study is slow reading, never fast, because we have to go in and among the words to get to the depth, because written words are written by people who squeeze their mind through a pencil. And we have to go back up the pencil and into the mind of the, and beyond that, even to the sources, which can be done if we listen to our own thoughts and take notes as we read. That's called shamanic reading. And once we do that, we undo a lot of the rush and the panic of the educational institutions we went through. You remember, it's May. We have to finish the textbook. Everybody, 5 chapters over the weekend. Will be a quiz on Monday, and the final exam will be on Wednesday. We have to undo all that.
That's true.
And we have to get back into ourselves and into our imagination, who we really are, who we were as children, as fresh souls, when we were alive and we could play a game and go into another dimension. You remember? We didn't need anything. I remember in Brooklyn, in an apartment where I was born in New York, I was playing with my brothers underneath the dining room table, on the floor, on the linoleum, as they used to call it. And we were swimming under the ocean. And my father came in and he says, what the hell are you doing? The bunches, you're getting filthy. I looked up and I said, but we're under the ocean. That went over real well. He said, get the hell out of here and get out in the street and play with normal kids. And that night we tried to get into the game again. We couldn't. That's what happened to us all. And we have to undo it somehow. And the imagination of us, the key, because it's the realm of soul.
And that's why you were mentioning when you do these type of ceremonies, Evan was talking about doing a ceremony this morning. And so I tried to do some, you had suggested doing these mesa ceremonies, and I found an invocation online. And so, I was doing that for the few months past as well. And I find that very healing as well,
It's healing, and it is a sacrifice of the mind to the heart. Because when you do something that doesn't make sense to the mind, you're on the right track. If it's for your highest ideal. Because the mind is not ours, it never was, it's theirs. Because the human being is encased in a cubicle of trauma. I know this because I see 75-year-old people, siblings, arguing with each other over who mommy loved best. It goes on and on.
A lot of work, right?
Eventually we have to strike out for ourselves and undo all that fear. And our imagination can help us in various magical ways. And ceremony is one of those ways. Because when you do a ceremony like that, you're giving up your mind, your Western or European educated mind, and saying, this is not going to do you any good. But you're doing it for your highest ideal. And it's a step in mastering and overpowering that monitor that they have given us over ourselves.
Right. That's interesting. Well, it's fascinating. What do you think about that, Evan, as far as the way that you use ceremony and how that connects you to, say, imagination or spirituality in general, your use of ceremony?
Well, I come to believe very strongly in the power of ritual, especially seems to be a key to unlocking the powers of being effective in this world, and to help creation continue that we all have. And I found that some things have been surprising, especially with people who have had severe trauma, who happen to wander into, a ritual about, something, or working with someone directly with ritual, with the trauma. It's not my main focus, but I've just found it to be amazingly effective in ways that I think nothing else has been effective for that person. You know what I'm talking about, right? Raymond, you've seen this.
Yes,
is that, maybe somebody's been through hundreds of therapists and nothing's working. They come in a mess. And then we start doing a ritual to honor the earth, and perhaps it's a holiday, native holiday, and suddenly things start to unblock, and there's improvement in the person's life and ability to communicate. It's happened quite a lot. And I think, as I recall, there was one case where I asked such a person who had completely changed and transformed everything about themselves by continuing to come to these rituals that were not about them. And I said, so how do you attribute the fact that you have completely changed everything in your life, and the way you communicate and the way that you feel? This person was super depressed, and no longer, she said, oh, those rituals you do every month, that's the key. That's what's made the difference, I think. So, it confirms what you're saying, because I do a lot of ritual, and of course it helps me, and that I'm, constantly in the mix with all kinds of people, out doing my 3 or whatever programs a week. I'm running to different people all the time. And there's those, healing moments. And so when I'm doing ritual, and it might be about anything that, that comes up, I'm getting a lot of healing from that as I go along. And so ritual is very fundamentally effective in that. And it has to do with bringing energy in, from another place, from another dimension. It has to do with the intention. I do a ritual, but I often start with a little protection, and it's like an affirmation. And it's like, surround me with a shield of healing white light that nothing can penetrate for the next turning of the earth and forever. Just that's the short version of it. But visualizing that in the morning and then visualizing your whole day going really well. But also, I want to say what I was taught by various elders is that the key to any ritual is actually offering. Is that, and I imagine you've run into this too, Raymond, is that the idea of exchange for what it is that you want to see change is essential. And the idea of doing a ritual without an offering to a lot of elders would seem very weird.
Yes.
It's like, what do you want to get out of it if you're not willing to put something in? And every culture has a different offering. Some tobacco obviously is very broad. Corn is very broadly used. Rice, but when you get down to it, there's generally an offering. And I think that's where a lot of people in the United States are missing out on the power of ritual, because there's no concept of, I'm entitled. I'm American. I'm entitled. Give me all these blessings because, I'm here and I showed up. It's like, but in the old way, the offering is a big part of it.
Well, lately
Are you still there? You okay?
I'm here.
I recently have just been so grateful to water, and I have been offering water so much gratitude, because honestly, my shower in the morning is probably my favorite part of the day, and water brings me that. Water is so healing for me, and so there you go, and and you hear about, if you express gratitude to water, or if you express gratitude, it changes its physical makeup, doesn't it? It your intentions can change, the molecules in water, isn't it? When you look at cymatics and things like that.
Because each thing of earth each thing of earth has its special power. We are in cooperation with the things of earth. We do not find enlightenment by ourselves. We find them with the other beings, the animals, the plants, the stones. Everything here is alive and is functional in all mutual pursuit of enlightenment. And so I find that as souls, we can reincarnate, we can come back as an animal, we can come back as a plant and completely sacrifice ourselves. Because when the American Indian looked at the food chain, they saw the plants, the animals, and the humans, and they asked the question, who gives the most? And the answer was the plant. Without the plant, we're not here. The plant gives itself up quietly and without the hunt. And so for the American Indian, the plant is the highest, and the plant for some, that's what my research shows, because I don't believe anything. Because if somebody believes something, belief is a German word. It means to be in love. Well, the verb to be, and lieben. When you fall in love with something and you think you know it, part of the one quadrant of your mind is gone in sensitivity to the things of earth around us. We think we know. We don't know anything. We feel, and the Creator communicates us through the various things, especially in nature. Human beings tend to get lost in the world of their own minds. And it's like the serpent eating its tail and eventually eating itself altogether.
See that all around me,
Yes.
Yeah. The fear, just being locked in fear and fearful thoughts, it must be contagious, because you can see it in pods of people as well, maybe it's that electromagnetic field that they create, and I don't know.
And that's why we all must pursue our own shamanship. We must subtract ourselves from membership in the groups. We can be members, we can be visitors, but we can never be loyal. We are loyal only to the truth, never to a group. No matter how much entrenched your family or your history is, if it's not the truth, that's what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 10, verses 34 to 36. Jesus explained what a shaman is, and he said it in earthquake form. He said, I did not come here to bring peace. I brought a sword. When I read that, it rocked me because he's always referred to the Prince of Peace. He was a great shaman. And he said that you cannot be loyal to any group if they're not following the truth. And the truth is justice and peaceful action with all other beings. And anyone not pursuing that, we cannot be loyal to them. We must he said the sword is for that, for separating. Even if it's your own family, your own set of friends, it's not worth it. The kingdom is not here. The kingdom that counts is our spirit.
Correct. That's fascinating.
Well, yeah, and that's never been any more true than now.
Yes.
And also, I want to add that in the Eastern Algonquin culture, there is a word for enlightenment, neolin, and if you track down this word, it comes up in a lot of the different Algonquin languages as the word for enlightenment. And then when you kind of pursue what does that mean, you know, it really has to do with seeing not only mentally seeing the interconnection with all beings, which is wisdom, but also feeling it in your heart and loving all beings as equals as well. So it's like heart and mind come together, and then you feel compassion for everything. That's what we'd say has a part of enlightenment or neolin. So I would agree with that.
Spoken like a Native American. That's exactly it. We're all born in this soil now.
What's that?
Spoken like a Native American.
Yeah.
Spoken because we're born in these lands. Feeling is the most important. It's the only sense that goes around the whole body. All the others are located in the skull.
Right.
That's one of the symbolisms, the metaphors of the crystal skull. We must cut it off metaphorically and begin to feel and not believe, just believe the other four senses. One that goes around the whole body. It's what makes America so special. In Edgar Casey's readings, he said, these are the red lines. And I'm very grateful for being born here into the land of corn and the intelligence of corn.
That's fascinating.
Well, I think that it does matter. Everyone, as you say, you know, born on Turtle Island is affected by its whole history. You think that, you know, the bodies of my ancestors and the ancestors of the native people, the Mayan and the Lakota, all Cherokee, you know, it's beneath the surface everywhere.
Yes.
And they lived everywhere. Where the Indians live, you know, and that's just, they lived everywhere. This is their land. And so we're on it, and we're on it in a sense by their graces spiritually. And yet it affects, I believe strongly, it affects every person living here in North America. And it's just that, you know, that shift, like you say, towards the heart, the feeling you know, of life directly, you know, and that's why, I mean, Americans are a little different, I think, than people of other continents, and that's part of it, you know. So I'm totally with you on that.
Yeah, it's a destiny here. American Indians struggle to impart knowledge to people who were so super confident that they are going to establish the new Jerusalem here. It doesn't belong here. It belongs there. This place different and unique testimony that it offers to the entire world. And that's what you and I are working on together alongside. And Kathleen also.
So
yeah, there's a lot of places in the United States called like Salem and and whatnot. And the Masons, of course, tried to, you know, reestablish what was lost in Europe. And I guess the Micmacs were a part of that, but maybe we didn't know.
Salem is the 5 letters of Jerusalem.
Exactly. That's right. And so there's a lot of places called Salem all over this. In each state almost, there's a Salem, right? Everybody's always trying to create the new Jerusalem. And I guess, you know, natives sometimes were, you know, working with Masons from Europe or whatever, whether knowingly or not. But as you say, that wasn't really what was destined to happen, but it probably helped to connect the two people in a spiritual way.
One day they will learn that they came to learn, not to teach.
Aha. Well, I would go
the
with
American Indian is the teacher here because they were the first to react with the exquisite geography here. And it was designed by the Creator to bring about that way of looking. We don't take for it, it just is. And so that's why we value the American Indian testimony, because it's alive, real, and it is the act of feeling and involvement with everything and everyone. I am very grateful to find the American Indian testimony, the third testimony.
I want to mention, thank you for saying that. I emphatically agree. There's a book called The Mishomis Book by Eddie Benton Benes, which is sometimes hard to get, but well worth any effort because it goes into great detail about the 7 fires prophecies, and a rainbow prophecy is part of that. But he goes into detail about what it is that natives were instructed to do thousands of years ago, or 1,000 years ago, before the advent of so many people from all over the world. And that is the key. It's like, you know, hold the space, hold the energy, and teach all who come. And don't preach hatred, preach love and inclusion, but remain as the teacher, because that's your right here. So that book is, like I say, it's available here and there, but it's called the Mishomis Book. And it was written, I think, originally for children, but it's no children's book. It's very, very advanced teachings. And that's part of where I got the understanding of the Algonquin moon turtle calendar, is some of it has come by studying that book, even though it doesn't talk a lot about it.
Yeah.
And you've heard the moon turtle. Is there, 13 plates on the back of the turtle, which are the 13 moons of the year. And then around the outside of the turtle, you have the sometimes 28 scoots on the Mexican box turtle. And then you can kind of have two. With kids, I say it's like a piece of bubble gum. It's like Monopoly. You put a piece of bubble gum on one of the inner scoots to represent the month, and then every night you move the outer scoot marker. And then when you go all the way around once, then you move the inner one and you start all over again. And so it marks a whole year. And actually, if you have two of these, you can presumably predict eclipses, which apparently they did. And so the prophecies were presented with the calendar saying, well, this is, in this many turns of the calendar, you're going to find this choice will be presented to you.
Even in the church, as one living thing. The Chinese knew this anciently, but Europe did not. When I went to China to study, the Chinese never said the whole is the sum of its parts. The Chinese always said, and I learned this just by learning the language, that the part is the whole. Through any one thing, you can see the entire thing.
Yeah.
And science has come to that concept, sort of backed into it with the discovery of DNA, which is in every cell, and with the holograph, which is in every part of the picture. The whole picture exists. And what you're saying about the turtle just is knowledgeable of that. The American Indians knew that all along.
I want to mention that there is something happened here. Can you see me?
Yep, you're fine.
Okay, I'll just continue if you can see me.
Yeah, you're fine.
In the Algonquin, there is a rabbit in the moon, but it's a boy. He's the grandson of Grandmother Moon, and he is sitting cross-legged, facing to your left as you're looking at the full moon, and
Yes.
his large rabbit ears are facing to the right or heading to the right. And
Yes.
so once you see him, then you always see him
That's
as
right.
the rabbit in the Chimamus is one of the names in Lenape. There are many names because he's very revered.
Yeah.
And Wabus in Micmac. Each tribe has a name for the boy and the grandson in the moon.
Right.
And he brings good fortune in the sense that he can bestow blessings on people.
Yes.
And once you see him, then he'll always be there for you.
Right. That's right. And the rabbit is a special animal because I think the American Indians asked the question, why would the Creator put the rabbit in the moon for us to see?
Right.
So the recommendation of the Maya is that the rabbit tells us how to be in the incarnate world. Very sensitive. When we go to look at the rabbit and bond with the rabbit, we see the whiskers and the nose twitching with an extreme sensitivity, almost to the degree of nervousness. We see the ears moving independently, not fixed on any one point, because the prey has more wisdom than the predator in many areas. And then we look at the eyes that see independently. And then they can move 1 inch this way and that way. They have 360-degree vision. And so we bond with the rabbit to achieve that sensitivity, because the rabbit is able to do that for us. And that we add that to our soul. And then we see more, we hear more, and we feel more. And the rabbit comes in and lives in a cage and sacrifices to us to bring us that lesson.
We say his ears are close together.
Yep.
And that you translate the words for rabbit, sometimes it turns out ears close together.
Yep.
But also, he has big ears, so he's very sensitive to what we say.
Oh, yes.
That's part of lore,
And
but also I'm sorry, the rabbit has the power of create. Have you ever heard that? The rabbit holds the secrets of creation. That's why they're able to have so many babies.
Yes. Yes.
Uh-huh.
And the rabbit is the one that helped the Mayan Christ in the ball game, is a hero.
Oh.
Yeah, there's many legends all around. We have to study them all. The wisdom is everywhere.
Right, and it's fun to try. I don't know if you can ever, get it all in, but it's fun to try. It's so interesting. The world's mythologies, could have grew up. My father was a Joseph Campbell enthusiast.
Oh, yes.
And so he would read from Joseph Campbell at the dinner table, as some fathers would read from the Bible, but he felt this was, maybe very interesting stuff for little kids to hear. Yeah. So we all heard growing up about, Joseph Campbell from the 1960s, and there's so much you can never really quite grasp.
When he spoke, it was overwhelming. And I had to go to the books and try to understand the bits and parts. He devoted himself to the world and had no credit on any culture. He's an amazing man, a shaman.
Did you ever meet the shaman Joseph Campbell in your life?
I never did.
Yeah, neither did I. But Jean Erdman, carried on. And she said that when she met him, she asked him what he wanted to do with his life, because they were already immediately interested in, possibility of marriage. She says, well, what do you do for a living? He says, well, I want to make a framework that everything fits into.
There you go.
She said, okay, let's go. Let's do it,
Yep.
It's such a preposterous thing to do, and yet he really did it. I think he really did it.
It's the work of the shaman. Everything fits in. There is no out, only in.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So, terrific persons. Can you see me, Kathleen?
I can see it. Yeah. So
Yeah.
tell me, what was his shamanic work, Joseph Campbell, that you were just talking about?
The shaman, I think Evan just expressed it. To make a framework that everything fits in. There is no
That's how
outside, only inside, all central and necessary to each other in the process of enlightenment, created by a creator, a great spirit that knows what it's doing.
All right.
Right, presuming to take it as truth that we're all one, and to see if that really works. And of course, a lot of what his shamanic work was about was seeing the oneness throughout the world. But he also said at the end of his life, he said, well, I have to tell you a secret. It's all connected, but it doesn't lie flat.
I like that.
That's one of the funniest things I ever heard. So he studied like billions of stories and fit them all together, and he found this great unity. But he says, oh, by the way, it doesn't all lie flat.
No, it's round like the earth.
It's like
it's round like the earth.
It's like herding cats, right? To get humanity to do anything all at once, right?
I think it was for entertainment.
What would you say? What did you say? I missed that.
I think half the reason we were created was for entertainment. I hear laughter.
Oh boy.
I think so.
Yeah.
Well,
my favorite definition of the creator is that of the comedian playing before an audience afraid to laugh.
Oh, yeah. How true. How true.
so
We say that there's this saying that there's a great grandfather in the spirit world who has a system and philosophy that encompasses absolutely everything and shows how it all fits together perfectly.
Yes.
And then there's a great grandmother spirit teaching that contradicts every word of it.
There you go. There you go.
And that's the comedy of
it. So you say we just should take it all in, but not believe any of it, right?
None.
Yeah.
Truth is in nature.
Don't believe.
Thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. I love your definition of believe. I've never heard that, but it linguistically makes sense. And I've been wondering about that word. Like, what is this belief thing? And you opened up my mind there with a key. It's that, to be in love with a thought, and a model and an approach.
Yeah.
That's that whole story. It's like if you hear the grandfather's teachings and everything fits together, we so want it to, that we put our belief in that. Yeah. But actually there's more to the story. And I believe the reason why, now this is my personal maybe insight and not meant to be an answer, but the grandfather teaching is an intellectual construct that makes everything, sees through the variety and sees the unity. But the grandmother teaching is seen through the heart and seen through the needs and feelings of each individual person. And that changes everything.
Remember that the creator is still talking. He didn't stop. And the woman knows that. The woman they have hearing like the rabbit.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, can be like, all right.
It depends on.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why, that has to do with why creation continues and why we have to be part of it. Because, we read, the Bible is it's an incredible story, among other things. And it's heroic, and all these people help creation to continue. But then somehow the book stops at a certain point and in time, and then that's it. And so what are we supposed to do, right? But in the native view, it's like, yes, those stories are true, and we have stories that are true that go back thousands of years, and our stories continue right up to the present, and they involve you. And so that's a totally different feeling about it.
And
so you experience that.
Are you, are us. And so we read with no belief. We read wide open as it's the word of truth. And we don't, I don't consider anything mythology. It is all testimony. And testimony is read by the shaman and read completely and allowed to come in and let the subconscious take care of it. Let the soul take care of it.
Yes, yes. There's a book of mine called Native American Stories of the Sacred, and there's a section that are a bunch of Washoe stories from out west.
Oh, yes.
And it's so clear the difference about the Washoe. They have these stories, and they're almost like these, their monster stories are like our horror movies, or Stephen King. They come right up at you. And so some of these stories of the Washoe, they'll start thousands of years ago, and they'll continue, and it builds and it builds, and it just keeps going. And it's like, and yesterday, you won't believe what happened. And it's like, oh my God, I'm part of this crazy story, And there's like Hanawiwi. There's a story about Hanawiwi, which I don't know. I think it's okay to talk about. But, there's these horrible monsters. And then it really comes up to the present day, like these monsters are still around, and there's these signs you look for, and it's like, it's real, like this Hanawiwi. And I don't know, I'm not saying I've seen a whole Hanawiwi, but a lot of their stories, like there's the story of the very powerful stories about the water babies who are, like landkeeper spirits, elementals that protect the water, and woe be to those who destroy or pollute the waters, because the water babies will come and punish them. Ooh. And these stories continue right up into today. The whole, they tell stories of things that happened recently where people were punished, and whole towns were punished for desecrating the waters. And that's how I think most of the stories were hundreds of years ago. Yeah. And around the world.
Yeah. Lessons brought by people who could feel nature. We are separated from nature. It's harder. We cannot engage with nature. The ancients do. And so we have to strive, make extra effort to get out there and be with the plants and the animals and not talk to ourselves 24/7. Yes. We are, what am I going to do? One day I have this problem, and we're walking in the forest, and the birds and the trees are talking to us, and we're talking to ourselves, so we hear nothing.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Were you going to make a comment about the Hopi, Raymond?
Yes, the water babies. There's a similar story in the Hopi and the Navajo storytelling towns about the water babies and how it caused a great deal of trouble. And so I think with the substrate of the American Indian, they're all together. There are different stories, different direction colors, different this, different that, but the substrate is continuous and beautiful.
That's amazing.
Whoop, battery's low.
Yeah. So the Hopi have had some very powerful prophecies. I think some of them have come true.
Yeah.
So, or becoming true.
Wow.
They're amazing people, and they picked the worst land you could think of. No running water, nothing. Barren mesas. Excuse me, I'm plugged into the battery. Yeah. Barren mesas they live on, and they are people of peace. They just won't engage in war. They're not going to do it. They are incredible. The closest they came to war was the Big Push, where if there's a disagreement in Old O'Reilly, and there were two groups that couldn't reconcile, and everybody the two groups got together and just started pushing this way or that way. And the one that won, that was it, and that was the end.
I was wondering, Raymond, did Did you have any information about today's date? You know, and any particular meaning of today's date?
Today?
Yeah.
What is it? What is it?
Today's May 1st.
May 1st, yes. Well, I speak British, so I speak Irish, so I speak British. And there is a holiday here, a Gaelic holiday called Belfina,
Right.
or Beltane, as they say it in the West, or in the German world. And it is the time right in the middle between the spring equinox and the summer solstice.
Right.
They would make two fires, and they would drive the cattle through the two fires. It's the place of the middle, and the place of safety, and the place of balance. Because nature was always talking to them. They were indigenous people. And it was the time of a new fire in the middle. And putting out all the fires, and then starting the fires in the homes fire to unite them in their question. And for the Maya, what is today? Let me just see. Oh, I don't have it. What 11 is one of them. I have a feeling that it's 11/17. And 11 is the person, the sacred number. It's a living thing. A number is a living thing. And everything is number. Our science tell us that now, because when we look at the difference between gold and silver is only number. All the electrons, the neutrons, and the protons are the same. It's just the number of them that decides the different appearance manifestation to us. And that's why the numbers are so important to the Maya. And there are two sacred numbers in the calendar are 20 and 13. And the number 20 represents the series of 20, and 20 being the flower, the Lord, the one who achieve shamanship and a flowering of their lives. And then in the 1 to 13 is the ability to change and flex, and 13 represents the ability to flex and go on to another level of shamanship and not think that you know. Always remember there's another round, there's another level, thousands and thousands of them. And today is 11, 17 is Kaban. I hope
What was
I did
that?
a reading this morning, but I don't have the record. And I think it's 11/17. 17 is the number of the earthquake. And a 17 person is the one who's always in the right place at the right time, because that's the place in the earth that needs an adjustment right there.
That's
And
interesting.
person has a name in the Mayan world. Depending on the sequence of the numbers 13, they are one of them. I'm the number 7, which means I have a big mouth on me. And also that I am in the middle number of the 13, which I have my little addictions. Ask my wife, she knows everything. And so, because there's no such thing as addiction or worry about addiction, because it is the study of a particular spirit substance. It's a different way of looking. And as long as you walk the line with it, you're allowed. The number 17 is symbolized by a bird that's circling and knows exactly where to come in. So people of the 17, when they develop their shamanship, they can shapeshift and go to different places in the instant moment.
Interesting.
I love the numerology of the Maya. It's astounding to me.
I think I was 13.
I know how to use it until I got a crystal skull.
Right.
It taught me.
The skull taught you, yeah.
Yeah.
But so you know some 17s then. Do you know a 17?
Do I know a number 17?
Yeah.
Oh, I can't place one right now.
Okay, well, it's interesting.
I have so
Good. Here's Evan.
I have to think of one individual person who's a 17.
I think I was 13.
You're 13. 13 is Ben. Is your name Ben?
Oh, mine was Hun Akbal.
Hun Akbal. Hun Akbal is 1 and 3. Together they are the 13.
Right.
When you look at it. Hun is the one who is in the room that has charisma of change and inspiration unknown to themselves. Like what you're doing here, you're bringing people together, and Evan and I are having a completely wonderful conversation, and you brought us together. And then the 3 is the one who has the gift of manifestation from the dark place, from the cave.
Right.
And a net is always to be in that dark place, because the net is the symbol for the Maya of manifestation of that which is unknown and ready to be gifted.
I did. I hung a net. I had a fishing net. It's
Oh,
like
there
a
you
bag. So I have that hanging there where I have a dream catcher and
I do the same. I do the same. Yeah.
and a few other things. So you told me to do that. So sometimes I'll go in. My room is very dark, like a cave, and I'll do my meditation there. So I'm hoping that you're telling me I can manifest if I go into a dark cave.
And do rituals, and you use your mesa in your own way. I suggested stones through the calendar, but the shaman picks their own stones because stones become a companion to you, just as animals do. And when they become your companion and you bond with them in respect, they give you the gifts. So we have nothing. It's good for the human because then we can't take credit for it ourselves. That's our pitfall.
Well, what I find interesting, I pick up stones all the time when I go over the past year for these walks on the Tungus Trail, which is the Blue Blaze Trail is right behind my house, Evan. It's called the Tungus Trail. And so I pick up stones all the time. I'm just crazy about them. And I did give one to my shaman in Trumbull. I was doing family constellation therapy. You sit in a circle and you do this. And I gave her a stone, and she did a journey on this stone after about a month. And she talked about being brought to the place of the bend in the river, and was met by a dignified Native American woman from the Tungus tribe.
Wow.
I could tell you a little bit what she said. I thought it was fascinating. And her 2 younger apprentices. The one on my left was an herbalist. The other on the right behind grandmother was a medium who did divination for the tribe. Grandmother thanked me for my spirit work of mending tribes and families. She said she gifted this sharp cutting stone through Kathleen to keep me sharp as I do the surgical work of healing and resetting the bones of the family.
Wow.
She gave me the name Family Bone Setter, as the stones are the bones of the earth. She showed me how the British settlers broke up their families and wigwams, and how the early settlers' families have been broken through immigration too.
Yes, yes.
And she said, at that point in the journey, I felt the pain of that in my whole body, and tears rose up from this genetic and epigenetic and soul memory. And she felt tears for being gifted the humbling teachings from them all, So I just found it fascinating, and she goes on and talks about this meditation. I would like to learn how to journey to my stones.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's something that either one of you can advise me on, but I have a lot of stones, so that would sound like a lot of trips I can take.
Always ready to help you. Just use it in your ceremony, and it's not accessible by us. It is always gifted. They just comes out of nowhere because you've done to a level which we don't know. And then you achieve a certain resonance with the things around you and in your being and your word, and magical things happen, and the soul is intended for you to gather in this lifetime will flock to you.
It's so interesting.
Yeah.
So, because I felt like, of course, spending so much time in nature the past year, as I've been on a sabbatical to recuperate my health. And so I kind of feel like I was doing this research after I talked to you about the Tungsis tribe in particular. And so I kind of felt like, is that how the spirit was working through me? Because I was kind of tuning into, the people here that lived here before, so I'm trying to learn how to read symbols. You've seen my emails to you when I see the bobcats or the rabbits, and so I'm kind of new to reading.
Yes.
Really,
You see them, they have a message all the time. Everything has a message because everything is much more exquisitely intelligent than the human being is willing to admit. We have a little bit of creator envy. We want to have it our way and do it our way. It's been going on long before we arrived. And even inside our own body, we are not. 2/3 of the smallest cells of us are plants and animals with different DNA than we have. We are a group project. And we think we have it by ourselves. And so we have a long way to go to learn. And, you're on the path. Just by your very words, you're on the path like the rest of us.
I hope so.
And watch for the magic. And use that imagination because that's the only thing that conquers the mastery of the grip of the mind given.
The imagination.
There's some native, if I can interject, there's some native people that believe that intelligence is actually outside of us, and our brain, so-called brain, is really best used as a resonator. And of course, we do have a memory, but memory really isn't intelligence. I mean, a computer has that, but that intelligence is in the air. It's in everything, every rock and tree. And so our natural state is to especially receive ideas and to receive, that's where artists would have no problem with this, but that the whole concept of intelligence is all backwards, and that isn't really, our ideas, but our brain organizes some of the information that comes in. And so some of us, we wear hair longer or whatever as antennas, or we use feathers as antennas to pick up the intelligence that is in all things. And we say that, like you were saying, Raymond, earlier about how we can't really understand it all. And that's why we use the word great mystery, which is no mystery as to why we say that, because, that really puts us in, the receptive frame of mind that we don't know it all. And there's always more to it. And I wrote a poem recently in the new poetry book that's coming out. It's called Red Headband, but I talk about speak as one with all that is and more. And that's a paradox, but it fits into certain teachings. Both Iroquois and Algonquin talk about how the creator really is the sum of everything that has ever been, ever existed, ever done, ever said, and that the minute we go to the next moment, then more things have happened and more thoughts have been thought. And so the creator is constantly expanding. So when we pray, we speak as one with all that is, which is that resonator that's inside us, that's picking up on this intelligence that's in every leaf and rock. And so then we speak as one with it rather than trying to understand it. And then there's more.
And it's endless. And for the Maya, the number 13 is called Ben in the 20 sequence. And it's symbolized by the reed, R-E-E-D, because the reed is hollow at the center, like our spinal column. To be like the reed, that's where our civilizations came from. The place of the reeds, like Tolan in ancient Mexico.
Right.
The ancient place of the Toltecs. Tolan, the place of the reeds. And the reed is the place where we resonate inside. We feel, we think, we know what's true, and we proceed from there. But then we go outside in groups. And there's a lot of problems when we join groups. A lot of, I was on a board many times, and in Western society, there's Robert's Rules of Order. It's a sort of a European way of parliamentary democracy. But it has a problem. It talks about what's on the table, what's off the table, but nothing is ever said about what's under the table.
That makes sense.
Wow. Never heard of that.
The elephants are there.
That's
The
perfect.
special privileges.
That's where the elephants are.
Special things that people have, yes.
One of the things that I read in some of the books that I passed through, I thought was interesting about how it said about how the Indian would transfer knowledge or your laws or just how you should live. It was all verbal and it was kept in your mind, right? And you knew this yourself, but as we've come along all this way now, all of the laws and all of the rules are written in books and they put them up on a shelf, right? And nobody looks at them anymore.
Because we will never figure it out. That's why Evan said the great mystery. The Catholics, I was raised as a Catholic, they always said that. It's a mystery not given to us understanding. And Evan, we have something in common. I was educated by the Marists.
Oh, okay. I went to Catholic University, by the way, studied with, some of them were Jesuits, but then I taught at Marist 15 years at Marist College.
I was
and
up there.
There is some,
Yep.
yes.
Yeah, that's what I heard from them.
When were you up there?
It
Probably.
was in the 50s. Long time ago.
Before I was there. Well, Marist College was.
They had a school up in White Plains, New York, the Bronx, also, and I was in Manhattan.
Yes.
In a Marist school.
Right.
Just touch a few common.
And the Marist brothers were running it.
Oh
right?
yeah.
The Marist brothers were teaching.
They were tough.
Yeah, now it's changed.
They were tough.
Yeah, I heard. I met some of the last ones long ago, but it's changed, Now it's all about they're building buildings everywhere and got a few vestiges.
Yeah. It's good to reminisce, though.
But
and see that.
Right.
In history, I sort of it resonated with me. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a small world, right?
Yeah, I was there a very long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Mar Peter Raoul was teaching there, and she went way back to the early days, and we worked pretty closely together. And I guess she was quite the activist.
Yeah.
And really had some radical ways of teaching. It was delightful to see her in action. Dr. Mar, everybody knew her.
Yeah. And so the religions are wonderful. The people in them are wonderful. It's just the small groups that they form. One gets the leadership and perverts the whole thing. They're like
right. True.
The hierarchies, right?
Yes. And in the Mayan calendar, the one who is the number 10 knows the hierarchy. They can smell it.
Wow.
The dogs smell each other so they find out who's their pecking order. And people who are
smell it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but worked on the honoring the anniversary of the massacre of the Tappan people on February 25th, and the Dutch Reformed Church, which was in existence and had people on both sides. That some of the attackers were, maybe not very good Christians, but they were affiliated with this church. And on some of the natives who were killed in the massacre were actually what they call Jesus Indians, and then it had been converted to this, Dutch Reformed Church. And so I went to the leaders of the Dutch Reformed Church and I asked if they would like to provide a space for us to mourn for those people and honor them and send them off and to educate people about these massacres. And what they did is very interesting. as the governing body issued a heart-rending statement of sorrow asking for forgiveness for what was done 343 how many years ago. And that's now in my book, it's being published there, but also released. But it was from, this higher level of authority within the Dutch Reformed Church, because they know their own history and they know they were there on both sides and wanted atonement for that. So that was, I thought, really amazing and wonderful. And that's one of the things I'm hoping that will happen more and more.
Yes. Earth contains the memories. And I don't forget the memories. I feel them when I walk. I feel the slavery. I feel the massacre.
Right.
And they're not to be forgotten, but they be forgiven. And everyone has to do their part to, one by one, forgive them, so that there is no more reason for conquest and no more reason for forcing other people.
You were saying something about undoing blame. Is that the term that you used, undoing blame? And that we've all kind of played the role of victim, persecutor, and rescuer over our lifetimes.
Right. And that's part of it, because I can't blame, because that's why I love reincarnation. Because I've probably done something really making me mad. It's reminding me of what I've done.
Right. And that's the way we have to forgive.
By this time, we've done it all.
Right. By this time, 8,400,000 lifetimes to go. One of the things is that the truth and reconciliation movement, actually, God involved some of their people, got involved with what we were doing, and that's been going on. Yeah. But, it's rare that it's really applied to Native Americans in particular, but I think it, should be. And so I'm asking people in their own communities, if they want. February 25th is a convenient day, because that's the anniversary of the, that massacre I mentioned in Pavonia. But anybody, anywhere out there who want to, can organize their own, truth and reconciliation, and organize a day of atonement and a day of honoring and mourning for, for Native Americans. There's been, I mentioned, like 20 really important massacres where the victims were non-combatant. They were not at war at all.
Many of them are not in the books. Okay. You have to go back way deep to the ethnologists' histories and little corners to find, like the bounty hunters who were sent in California, got $2 a scalp. At first they killed all the animals so that nobody would be left alive, and anybody that hung in there was, they went in and hunted them to get them off the land. It's not in the book. The shop to read deeply. Go back into the pencil from the authors and read in between the lines.
Mm-hmm.
It's there.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing can be hidden.
Yeah. I like that. I like your image of the pencil.
Yeah.
There's
like to say, I use.
Well, what I read on the books, even just reading about Deerfield, Massachusetts, and some of the stories that I read here that happened in Connecticut, it's enough, like you're saying, Raymond. I can feel that pain. It's pretty incredible. I haven't done much study, and I would like to do more, but
feeling, it's intelligence of feeling. And it's not study, it's an awareness and a sensitivity that rises, that makes you do ceremony. Suddenly you stop in a place and something happened there. And most people don't want to take blame, they want to say, or not be responsible for it. We are all responsible for what has happened.
Right.
All of we are responsible, and once we take full responsibility, and we know enough to resign from the groups that are doing the wrong thing, we will be there.
What do you think, 20, 25 years? What do you think? We should pull it together.
Maybe next year.
We're in the age of Aquarius.
Next year would be a good year.
we're entering the age of Aquarius, so maybe we'll have some new help. Isn't that the water bearer? So that's
Yes.
very fitting that the water bearer is the avatar for this age, because water is such a precious commodity, and we're seeing with especially the indigenous that are trying to protect the water
Yes.
from the pipelines.
Yes.
I was watching about some of this that's happening up in Canada. I was following a little bit on Twitter. So I think I need to hear more and learn more about this. I watch Free Speech TV, and I do get a lot of good reporting on what's happening in Standing Rock from Free Speech TV, and I would encourage anybody to find that.
You don't have to get it from the news here. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, it's very good. So is there anything that
I want to say...
Yeah, Evan, I was going to ask if you had any comment on that.
Well, during the Standing Rock, I chose not to go out there. I chose to stay at home and use the internet and also our local resources to put on teach-ins and events to keep everybody up to date on what was happening at Standing Rock, because the media was blacking it out, and even Amy Goodman only did one story, but you couldn't find out anything from the media, and the internet was iffy. So I organized a series of events called Standing Rock on Hudson, and also just addressing our own issues here. But we had people who had spent considerable time at Standing Rock come and give their testimony and describe, and we had full house every time. And so then after a while, the Clearwater Festival came along, in Croton, New York. And they asked me to put on a Standing Rock on Hudson festival inside their festival, which had never really happened before. And so we had, again, Native people connected to Standing Rock, but also water protectors. And we also had John Cronin from the original Riverkeeper speak. But the whole idea was a teach-in to educate. And now what's happening is the Falcon Jazz Club in Marlborough, they have a waterfall directly next to the building. And so they've asked me to continue my Standing Rock on Hudson, only obviously it has to change. So now it's called Tribal Harmony. And every fourth Thursday, we'll have like a native gathering right there, and we'll have music, and we'll do some simple ceremony of Thanksgiving at the waterfall. And the idea is that we're continuing the idea of water protectors and land protectors on beyond Standing Rock, because it has to go beyond. Because Standing Rock, you could look at it minimally and say, well, they failed to stop the pipeline because of, Trump's edict and everything. We actually stopped it under Obama. We didn't stop it under Trump. But then what happened now is that it really did start a movement, and people are starting to name that movement various things. But I think we'll find out what name the wheel lands on, right? Mm-hmm. And we'll say that, it's like, that's why Standing Rock. Well, it's really where the eagle landed, in a sense. It's just, all the circumstances together. Nobody chose it, but that's where it all came together. And that was like the spear point, people say, for the whole movement to reverse, the pipelines and some of this negative infrastructure. So I'm saying that we must continue this movement, whatever we want to call it, of what was called, Standing Rock. And most people don't even know that that's basically where Sitting Bull was killed. That's where he lived, and that's where he died. And so, you didn't hear that. You didn't hear much of the story of any kind. But, this shows perhaps why there was so much, why the eagle landed there, because Sitting Bull was an incredible warrior who stood up for his truth and, against the world if he had to. And he was killed there, because of his association perhaps with Wovoka and the ghost dance, but more to it. And so it's symbolic of that. And there were sacred stone. People also don't know, by looking at the media, that there were many, many sacred stone carvings all through that area. And that's why they were protecting it. And so when they finally told the judges, like, we have to protect this because of all these sacred stones. Right. And that's where the sacred stone camp was. And then within 24 hours, bulldozers had totally destroyed all of these stone monuments and markers. before they could even knew what was going on. They used that testimony, which was a plea for compassion, as an excuse to destroy thousands of years of record keeping. That's what it was about.
Yeah. Well,
So we're continuing. We're continuing the Standing Rocks on Hudson under another name, but at the now at the Falcon, which or the we call the Falcon Waterfall in Marlboro, New York.
Yeah.
That's all I know.
Fantastic.
And what you're doing, the work that they're doing, is very powerful. We have to realize that even small. I remember, I always go back to Margaret Mead, one of the great first real sociologists, and she said, never underestimate the power of the few to change the whole thing. And so we never lose hope. That's all we have is a little silvery cord, as the Buddhists call it. A little silvery thread of hope. That's our only friend sometimes to hold on to. But we have the edge.
Mm-hmm.
We have the advantage. We just don't realize it. The edge is with us in magical ways.
Well, I'm so glad that both of you could join me here tonight. I can't believe it's almost been 2 hours.
Yeah, I was going to be on for, but then I met you guys, and so everything changed.
Yeah, my whole schedule changed completely too. Yeah, I mean, this wasn't at all what we all expected, right? But better.
Well,
sometimes there are unexpected things are better than we knew.
Right.
Yeah, that's the truth.
That's why you never give up.
Yeah.
Unexpected things can happen that are good things.
Wait for them.
Right?
I hope that I could, if I'm going to be continuing and this will go on, I hope, we'll be able to talk again, because I would look at you both as teachers and would love to learn more from you. And you have, a lot of knowledge that I think that a lot of people need to hear. And if I can help to spread that message, that's what I'm here to do.
Thank you, Hun Akbal.
Thank you. Thank you both so much for coming. Is there any other final words that either one of you, we do have 4 minutes left. So if there any way that you want to wrap up, anything that you want to share, I would invite you to go ahead and do that.
All I have is gratitude for the conversation. It was just wonderful. And is this your first episode?
Yes.
You're off to a magnificent start. Thank you.
I have no idea where I'm just saying yes and kind of going with the opportunity to kind of share.
Wonderful.
And you have
good job. This is like May 1st is when the flowers bloom and the leaves come out. And so for you, this is for your Skyping career, whatever you want to call it, is suddenly moving forth. And I just want to say that, in terms of faith and hope and whatever that is a lot of things can happen that are totally unexpected and unforeseeable that are really great things.
Yeah.
And so you should never give up. There's always that possibility for something. And so you don't know where this will lead. It might lead to a whole string of totally unforeseeable events. And who knows, you could be, wherever you want to be, a movie, a TV show or whatever. So I'm happy to be part of the first.
Talking about like creating a resonance, right? And, that people responds to that resonance, right? That you were saying, Raymond. And I'm hoping that I will find some more people that I can call a tribe. Maybe you'll be in my tribe. I don't know.
And we're all around.
I just want to mention that
every moment, as we did before, many lifetimes through. It's Edgar Casey called us the followers of the one.
Yes.
We fought in Atlantis. We resisted the abuse and the taking of the powers that be. And Atlantis went down, but the shamans are like the rabbit. The rabbit always knows where the hole is to go.
Yes.
and transfer the knowledge to a new group and a new generation.
Yes. I'll work on
I
that.
just want to say that what come to mind, if we have 1 minute, is
Yeah.
that, many years ago, one of us were writers, we couldn't get published, so we got together at the Maybrook Diner and had a sandwich together, and we plotted a scheme of sharing our few pennies to publish a newsletter, to publish our writings for our friends.
Yeah.
And that turned into ultimately to Resonance Magazine, which became a national magazine, believe it or not, that I ended up being the papa for. But it started all with these, 4 totally unknown, unpublished writers. And then that
Exactly.
became Resonance Communications Books. And so now I just want to say that people want to get in touch with me or find out about my books from Resonance Communications, that, I have the algonquinculture.org website right now, or evantpritchard.com. But anyway, then they're in the stores. But the Resonance books are my own. And so people can read more about Native history through them. And also, I know, Raymond, you've written a lot, and I'm going to go and try to find out some of your writings because I'm very interested now in what you've written.
Usually one.
And so how can somebody get your writing?
You can contact my
One-to-one.
site, raymondtarpey.com.
And this information
Right.
will be posted
I'll do
with
it.
a link to the show. We'll include the websites too, both of your websites on the link with this podcast, so people
Great.
will be able to find you.
Right.
We'll connect that information because this will be out there for at
Thank
least
you.
a few years, or who knows, could be 100 years that will be out here on YouTube. We don't know.
It's
I thank you
immortal,
both. I thank you both. Thank you so much for being.
Thank you, Kathleen, for organizing the whole thing. Marvelous.
Thank you. I hope to talk to you both again soon.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you. I hope to,
Yeah.
may we meet again soon.
Yes.
bet.
Thank you, Ray.
Okay. Take
Good
care now.
night. Good night, everyone.
All right.
Humanity has been on an epic journey of discovery, learning the truth about the world we live in. New discoveries about the true origins of humanity, ancient history, free energy, as well as the systematic corruption of world governments are now on the forefront of our daily reality. Is the world headed towards destruction based on control and power? Or is an opportunity now being presented to shift and uplift into a higher consciousness? My name is Mel V, co-founder and creative director of Conscious Consumer Network, an independent broadcast network that was launched on the 1st of January 2015. In the last 3 years, Conscious Consumer Network has broadcast over 2,800 shows in multiple languages, featuring guests from across the world, whilst creating media that is aimed at the creation of a free, fair, peaceful, just, sustainable world. Conscious Consumer Network provides full training and an interactive support network for all broadcasters, and we are always looking for inspiring and educational content.
Hi, this is Lady Liberty.
And this is Miro Siegel.
In 2018, Conscious Consumer Network has expanded to multiple broadcast locations, increasing our availability and reach across the world, remaining on the cutting edge of independent media. If we wish to create a better world, we must first create better media, geared towards real education instead of indoctrination.
You guys really are what changing the world is going to be about. It's educating kids at a grassroots level.
Having become a pillar of stability in the turbulent world of independent media, we have even more going on in 2018. Conscious Consumer Network is a publicly funded network, and we rely on all of you to keep us on the air. Show your support for independent media by donating to our 2018 Network Support Fund. Dare to seek a better world. Support independent media.